let's get this party started. I know a lot of people are really excited. I know also that there are some other programs other people want to get to at like 9 o'clock. So I don't want to compete with other Jews. That's really important to me, to spread the Jewish love. So I want to tell my mostly funny story to where my journey to where I am now. I know that the caption on the poster just talked about Adele Shana, who passed away in 2008. And I mean, other than that, for the most part, my life's been pretty hilarious. And we'll find out later that there are even some very strangely funny parts about losing a child, which I hope that we can share and laugh awkwardly at together. But we'll get to that. So if there's any questions as we go along, if you can just like pop them into the chat or the Q&A, don't WhatsApp me, because that's just so many things. And you can really only expect so much computer literacy from a person who was born before computers were a thing. So let's start there. I was born in 1982. I was raised in South Florida, Palm Beach County, and I am Jewish by birth, raised Jewish by traditional secular Jews in a household that very much mirrored the Jewish culture of the time throughout the community. And I went to a day school, a conservative day school that taught Hebrew as a spoken language, and it taught Torah as a text. And I went there for 9 years. So I left speaking Hebrew really, really well and knowing Torah textually very well, and looking at Judaism as something that you know and sometimes do, but not 100% something that you are. And that may very well be because at that point, I had always really been surrounded by other Jews. Since it was a Jewish school, all of my peers were Jewish. So the idea of Judaism being something that you are really like blended into the background because it was like a default for me. So when I went to public high school and I was suddenly surrounded by kids from other cultures, this thing that had been a default for me suddenly was brought to the forefront in its absence. The fact that I didn't have enforced time to do Jewish reminded me that I am Jewish, that is really, that's not something that has a spot on the schedule or a place in my life. It really is identity. So as high school went on, that's when I really started to understand what Jewish identity meant and how I could live Jewish as opposed to know Jewish or do Jewish. And I went through like the ubiquitous Jewish teenage experience that I think if there are other FSU grads who are signing on right now, they're totally going to be like smiling and nodding like, oh yeah, I totally, yeah, huh? So I was in BBYO, B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, and you know, a lot of other kids, Sefty, Tasty, USY, whatever, it's all the same deal. It's Jews getting together to like talk about how awesome it is to be Jewish and like do some Shabbosy kind of things and sing funny songs and just like hang out together. And that was like a really great feeling to have Judaism be this thing that like brought us together as opposed to just this thing that was just always there. And I went to Jewish sleepaway camp, again, time to sing Jewish songs and be with other Jewish kids, but now in the woods. And then, of course, I don't know if they still do this, but in the 80s and the 90s, the Jewish federations raised money to send every Jewish kid to Israel on a peer-based trip. And now I know we've got birth rate for the college kids that missed that boat in high school. But around where I was from, everybody did a high school trip. It was just a given. Like, oh, which trip are you going on? Are you going on the 10-day trip? Are you going on this trip? Which group are you going with? Are you going with Temple Judea? Temple Judea was like the cool temple. I know that everybody had, like, in your little cluster of small towns I'm guessing I'm talking about like in Florida, the way things are structured, we've got like the county has a bunch of smaller towns within it, and each small town generally has its own reform or conservative synagogue. And like in each local cluster, there would be the cool one with like one rabbi that always played the guitar at Sunday school, or like that's where like the really pretty girl went to synagogue, or like whatever, that was like the cool one. And in my community, that synagogue also ran like the really cool Israel program. But I wasn't cool, so I didn't go on that one. I went on Alexander Muss High School in Israel, which is a 6-week program, and it is based on like a dual enrollment class of a modern history of Israel. So starting from creation up until now, it takes you through the history of the state of Israel. But since you're there, and Israel is a very, very archaeologically rich location, it takes you to all of these sites where all these things happen. So this would be like if in American history you went to Gettysburg. So only we did this like twice a week. So it was this amazing, incredible experience to now not only was I learning how to live Jewish, but I was learning how to live act Jewish, because I'm literally in the Jewish state and learning about the history of my people by experiencing it in person. And that was spectacular. And that was also where I had my first Shabbos. Now, growing up, we had Oneg Shabbat at synagogue. We had beautiful Shabbat programs at sleepaway camp, but I never had a Shabbos that was a halachically kosher Shabbos with everything rolled into it, the meals I'd experienced before and the songs I'd experienced before, but the disconnection, the turning off the lights, having everything ready before Shabbos, only being where you are when Shabbos comes in. This is the first time I ever experienced it, and I was hooked. I'm 17 years old at this point. This is 21 years ago. And, still living with my parents. The next year I'd plan on going away to college, and I'm like, I need this. This is amazing. This is just the greatest thing ever. And like, how do you explain that when you live in a secular world? You go to public high school, you live with secular people, be like, so Friday night, I'm out. we can't do anything. I'm just going to turn off my phone. Well, this is 1999, so I wasn't really just not answering the phone because I didn't have a phone. I'll have to explain exactly what that means to my children to not have a phone of your own. But I'm assuming there are people here who know what it means to not have a phone. Anyways, I had to tell people I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm not going to drive anywhere. I'm going to turn off the light and leave it that way. And everybody looked at me like, what are you talking about? What are you going to do with yourself for 25 hours? So I had to put it on hold for a year. And Shoshana, there's purple on my earrings. Sorry. Somebody was very upset that I'm not wearing any purple, but I just want to prove that. And it's in my hair. Anyways, so anyways, I had to put it on hold for that last year that I was at home before I went away to college. And then I went away to college, and I'm in my dorm room alone, and it's about to be Friday night, and Hillel wasn't really open, and I didn't know about Chabad yet. And so I was just like, I guess I'm gonna eat dinner and go to bed and like turn off the light, and that's it. And so I tried again. I'm trying to do Shabbos again, and again, brought to the forefront by its absence is this very essential part of my Jewish identity and its community, that it was very difficult for me to have Shabbos without community. So I spent the next few years trying to find that Jewish community where I belonged. And this is a really complicated and amazing journey that anybody who is making their way through Jewish adulthood is eventually going to have to go through. And it's not something that you can really learn in school. It's not really something that you can organically understand until it starts happening to you. So maybe I can give a heads up if there are any younger hip people here. I'm like scrolling through. Well, if you're all older than me, then you all know this story anyways. So as I went through college, I built this amazing community, or this amazing community was made apparent to me at FSU. And a lot of you are actually here watching right now. And it is a spectacular, amazing thing to know that you can build this family that will stay with you forever. And it's not just the knowledge that you gain from the religious experience. Because remember how I said before, to me, Judaism started out as something that you know and sometimes something that you do. So as I'm building my Jewish experience, as I'm building my Jewish community, I'm learning more, right? Getting older, had already learned more about Shabbos. That's really cool. So that went from a thing that I knew about to a thing that I'm doing. And more, I'm learning about what it means to live as a Jew every day. Things like washing your hands, right? It's like the beginning of Fiddler on the Roof. Like, oh, we have a way that we do everything, even a way that we put our shoes on. There is actually a Jewish way to put your shoes on, right, left, right. Only if there's ties. Anyways, washing your hands, right? I remember, like, I can't like pin down exactly like the first time I figured this out or the first time I learned this, but I definitely, Hani, remember standing in your kitchen and like kind of putting it all together that like the negavas or the washing cup wasn't just there for Shabbos dinner. Like if you had a sandwich on a Wednesday, you're gonna wash then too. And then asher yatzar, this bracha, asher yatzar. This is something that is amazing to learn and really fun to explain to secular people, right? The bracha asher yatzar. which we make after going to the bathroom. When else, like, who else would think about how amazing it is that you just went to the bathroom? But we literally praise Hashem for Asher Yatzar Es Ha'adam, that you made the body with chachma, with wisdom, and then describes piece by piece all of these pieces that work together so you could go potty. And it's like, not, who even thinks about that? Who thinks about how many times you go to the bathroom in a day? Like, it's just a thing. You run off, you wash your hands with soap, you sing happy birthday to make sure you get all the germs off, and then you go on with your day. But not for Jews. This was like a mind-blowing thing for me. And Chani, I remember you had like the laminated thing, like stuck to the wall or the door or something. I remember like staring at it like, what? Like, we had, like, how spectacular is this that, what, 7, 8, a dozen, I don't know, I have 6 kids, so with like 25 times a day, we remind ourselves that Hashem made our bodies piece by piece, by perfect piece, so that they work together for this very mundane function. And if one little piece of it stopped working, then we literally wouldn't be able to stand for even a moment. It's just amazing to me. Even now, we're talking almost 20 years later, it's amazing to me the thought that goes into practicing Yiddishkeit. And I think that things like that were such a major draw for me. These simple, mundane things were such a draw for me because I'm the kind of person that I want to think things through to the absolute last detail. And I remember taking philosophy in college, in particular literary philosophy. So like classical philosophers as it relates to literature. And we're discussing how all of these different philosophers find the end of reason, the point at which you can't ask why anymore. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe somebody who's watching knows. There was one philosopher got to the point where you keep asking, and there's a point where you just say, I don't know. And this all men call God. Like the great big I don't know is this all men call God. And I found that kind of unsatisfying because he could kind of like stick it in anywhere. And as I learned more about Judaism and more about daily living and daily learning, I realized there is a point that people don't understand, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But there are so many points and so many philosophical and practical and applicable points that there is no end to reason. There is no, well, we just because. And, you know, you can see in the background, there's a lot of books. And this is just some of them. And they're full of these whys, in particular, those down there pointing at the Gemara. And those are packed with the age-old foundation of our practice. Arguing. It's Rabbanim, rabbis, sitting together and writing down everything they're arguing about. Now, they have subjects. You can't really see it from here, and I don't want to mess up my whole very fancy book stack tripod situation going on. But the spectacular, I think I used that word a lot, amazing thing about Gemara, this is where we eventually derive our laws from, is so they have subjects on them to tell you, all right, you're looking for this, you're looking for things about eating, look at this one, things about this. And they start off on that. And they start talking about one particular question. Now reminds them of this other thing that they wanted to talk about. And which, by the way, that shares a word, because they are shovel with another word in another phrase, which is about something else. And then they end up talking about something else entirely. And they go back and forth. And this one doesn't agree with this one because of what this one said. And this one doesn't agree with this one because of what his father might have said at one point. And it's the most Jewish thing, the most relatable thing you could possibly imagine. Like thousands of years ago, this is written down. And it's basically like everybody's grandpa and uncle sitting around the dining room table. They've all had all of these conversations before. You just have to like switch the words around and you know that you know these people. And it's amazing, the timelessness of Yiddishkeit. I went to Eretz Israel, and I saw the places where, well, not that happened, that was in Babylon, where other parts of our history happened, and thousands of years forward, and here I am. And we have this amazing, timeless tradition that tumbles forward, and we get to carry it on with the things that we do and the things that we are. And how lucky are we that we have things like Shabbos and Kashrus and a bracha about going to the bathroom and 40-something books about with recorded arguments. And it is all connected through our hearts and our minds and our blood. We can trace our lineage back to the very, very beginning. We're all connected in this, and that's really spectacular to me. And learning Chassidus, learning the mystical elements of Torah, taught me how our souls were connected. And there's a very essential idea to Chassidus that our souls are like strings that are connected from us up to heaven, and they twine together like a rope. So my string is connected to your string, which is connected to the Jew down the street string, to the Jew across the world string, and this connection never ends. And it's so warming and uplifting to me to have, on the one hand, this history that stretches backward and this connection that stretches outward, and then this intellectual analysis that is almost never ending. And if you read Chitas, if you read the daily portion of Chassidus, it's really broken down into very digestible, very understandable parts. And I like to tell people that it's like the handbook for your soul, so that you can really understand the mechanical workings of this magical, almost incomprehensible thing. And you really do. You learn so much about how your soul works, how to strengthen your soul, how to strengthen your connection to Hashem. And again, like, it makes me feel so lucky that we have all this written down. If you study comparative religion, you find that there are a lot of different factions in other religions, and they're always trying to like hash it out of who has it more right in the way that they practice, but their practice ends at a certain level of connection, and it has a particular I don't want to say there's this is how we connect and that's all. And in Judaism, there's no end to the why, but why, because I am perpetually going to be a toddler when it comes to following rules and philosophical thought. There's just no way around it. I don't care how old I get. I'm always going to be about 3.5 when it comes to being told what to do. And I feel like Hashem, I mean, listen, we know that Hashem knows everything. For Hashem, time and space are infinitely visible. But in particular, when it came to me, like, he knew I needed to have Yiddishkeit there because he knew how irritating I would be otherwise. Because I would why? And Yiddishkeit tells us, okay, you want to know why we do this rule, why we follow this rule? Find it in here, and you're going to get all your why. That's the semantics. And then Hasidus talks to us about how our neshamas are connected to Hashem, and how why we do all those things. Why? Because they strengthen that connection to Hashem. And there does come a point where the why ends. But at that point, I'm so tired of asking why. I get it. Okay, fine. Hashem knows better than me. And Judaism is really a wonderful place for annoying people like me to be, but also for people who maybe think like a whole lot of themselves, because there just gets to a point where Hashem is bigger than you, and that's all you need to know. And that is a really spectacular tool to have, actually, for your average everyday human being to carry on through life. I'm trying to see if maybe I want to like look at everybody while I'm talking. Oh, this is just a bunch of black and white dots. Maybe not. This format is a really funny way to deliver public speaking, because I'm either talking to myself, or I'm talking to nobody, or I'm talking to like people in squares. It's hard to connect as well, I think, but it's also this really amazing opportunity to connect with so many more people, so spread out. So Baruch Hashem, we have this format, just finding my way to fit in through it. So on to the more practical application of all of this, of all of this why, and all of these little growths throughout my time at FSU. So I met my husband Josh while I was in college, and we got engaged before we were really both all the way religious, but we both knew that we wanted to be religious. And you know what, actually, let me take a backpedal a little bit there, and talk a little bit more about something else that pushed me into the open arms of Yiddishkeit, as it were. Now, I don't know what the culture is like at FSU now. I don't know what the social scene, outside of COVID, when there is no social scene. But when I was there, I started FSU in 2000, and we were the number 2 party school in the nation. And being a party school means something different for men than it does for women. In a party atmosphere, there's an expected availability from women, and that was not something I ever felt comfortable with. And I think that really like pushed me away from really fitting into that scene. But moreover, it pushed me more into Yiddishkeit, more into Judaism, because as I watched Hani live her life, and and I knew what I did of being a religious woman, I realized that expectation does not apply to Jewish women. That for Jewish women, bodily autonomy is implicit. It's not granted. It's not something that we have to fight for. Bodily autonomy, I'm going to say this again, bodily autonomy is implicit. And before I was even really able to keep Shabbos 100% or keep kosher 100%, I was so enamored with the idea of Shomer Negia and Sneiyut. Because to be understood that my body belonged to me was like being given words for a concept that I'd had in my mind forever, but couldn't articulate. And it was just a given in Yiddishkeit. And that was like mind-blowing. Now, before I talked about Asher Yatzar and how amazing it was to me that we consider every part of the body, but if you think of it that way, then bodily autonomy really makes sense, doesn't it? If Hashem gave you this amazing body and is truly concerned with every piece of it and how it works, then of course he trusts you with it, and it shouldn't belong to anybody else. Now, nowadays, in modern feminism and in the modern social conversation, we talk about this as consent. Consent is a very large issue, and it's something that we have to talk about with our kids starting when they're really, really young. And I'm really very happy to see it as something to see it being discussed in the secular world. But we had that before, and I feel so lucky to have found it when I did, to have found the concept of Shomer Negia and Sneiyut 20 years, maybe. I mean, we've been talking about consent in the rest of the world for a while now, so maybe 10, 15 years before everyone else really started having an open and frank conversation about it. This was something that I was already able to practice. And here again, we have, I'm living Jewish, not just knowing Jewish, not just doing Jewish, living Jewish every day in a way that the rest of the world is finally, catching up to in a certain way. So this was like a huge, huge attraction to me, to really go full on into that Jewish lifestyle. So my husband Josh and I, we decided to get married, and we lived in Tallahassee for about a year, and we knew that we wanted to live a religious life, the whole shebang, the beard and hat, and Josh grew one too, and wore a hat also, and I was wearing, I wore a wig when I went out, and when we lived in Tallahassee, it was this really hilarious, amazing novelty to be wearing a black hat, to be wearing a fedora, and not be a hipster. Because I think like on the hipster scene, even then, like fedoras weren't really cool yet. But I remember, and maybe Tanya remembers this also, walking home on Shabbos with Josh in his hat, and if he stood in just the right spot in the spotlight like this, then his shadow looked like a bathroom sign, because the hat was like a perfect circle, and then his shoulders and his arms, and it was, I mean, I'm not going to say that that's the best part about wearing a fedora, but it was definitely a perk. So we're living in Tallahassee, and we're surrounded by love, and we're surrounded by an encouraging environment, but we're growing kids in our Judaism, and we wanted to be Hasidic Lubavitch Jews. So where do Lubavitch Jews live? Brooklyn. So us two Florida kids packed up all of our stuff, which was not much stuff at all because it was just the two of us. And we headed north and eventually found ourselves a place in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Now, Floridians, I don't know if you know this, but New York is very, very different from Florida. Very different. So we were like, okay, we're going to do this for a year, and then we're going to go back to Florida to where we belong. And, it's one thing to be two struggling kids, just making it in the world and living on rice and beans and throw all your secondhand and IKEA furniture into a U-Haul and go where the wind takes you. But then children come along. And it turns out that kids need more than rice and beans and like IKEA furniture. So we were stuck in New York, and thank God, we started to grow an amazing family in New York. And this is where things get interesting, right? So our first child, Menachem Mendel, was born in 2006, and we were living in Crown Heights then. And then after that, we moved to Manhattan, where I was working in the Jewish community. And I had this amazing, spectacular role in the community where I was able to work with women and have these really incredible relationships with women and really get to know a lot of people. And I was pregnant with Adele Shana, my second child, when I was working there. And I remember when she was born and I went back to work, there was a sign on the wall that said, "It's a girl." And it really felt like this like community baby. And I thought about this later after she passed away, that like as I was working with women, she was there with me. She was part of that. And she was 5 months old when she passed away, and she died of SIDS. So she was totally fine, very healthy her whole life. She never even had a cold. And then one night I went to work, and while I was at work, my husband called me and said that the baby wasn't breathing. She was going to the hospital. And that was really it. By the time he called me, she was probably already dead. There wasn't anything that could be done. And definitely by the time I got to her, when I got to the hospital, which I later found out was only like 13 minutes between the time when the EMS had gotten to her, and when I got into the room, but for me, it felt like an absolute eternity. So by the time I made any contact at all, there was nothing that could be done. And I remember like thinking, what do I daven for right now? Am I supposed to bargain? Is there something is there a right thing to say? Because I like in movies, in media, if a child's in mortal danger and the parent knows, then the parent would always say, oh, take me instead. And not for selfishness, I'd gladly give my life for any of my children, but I had this thought of like, well, if I say that, am I committing to something that will damage my surviving child? Not that what I say is really going to have any effect on Hashem's decision of whether or not she lives, but I remember that being a consideration for me. Like, can I say, take me instead? Is that fair? It would be easier for Menachem Mendel, who was then 2.5, to survive losing his sister than it would be for him to survive losing his mother. Again, not like it was in my hands at all. And when she died, we were never left alone at any point. We had people, thank God, supporting us and taking care of things for us, and coming and sitting shiva with us and contacting us and reaching out to us from support groups. And I remember one woman called me. I don't remember her name, but she had been through something similar, and she was calling to check up on me, and she was really doing this out of a kindness and a desire to connect. But she asked, aren't you angry? And I thought, and I immediately answered no. I knew no matter what, that this was entirely Hashem's decision. And everything that comes from Hashem is good. But not all of that good is revealed. And to me, real faith is getting to that point where the good is concealed and not feeling obligated to reveal it or find the revelation. To know that it's good, but you don't have to find it. You know, it's really common when we're trying to cheer ourselves up over something awful to try to find the good in the situation. Always look on the bright side of life. That's a different religious. Anyways, to find the bright side. And I could tell you nice things that happened after Delshina died, but, and I will, don't worry. What I really, really want to share is that you don't need to know them. For me, faith is knowing that the good is concealed and I don't need it revealed to know that it's good. I know that Hashem controls everything. Hashem is everything. And Hashem's intention was for my daughter to spend 145 days in this world, and then the rest of them in the next world until Mashiach comes and she comes back. And that's good. That is good. I may not understand it, but to have peace with that, that is emunah shlema. That is complete faith. Now, the sheresh of complete and peace in Hebrew are the same. And I don't think that that's a coincidence at all. I think that it's very, very clear that my emunah shlema is my shalom. My complete faith is my peace. I don't need a happy ending to this story because there isn't one. There isn't. Like, there's no, your daughter's dead, but at least. And you listen, thank God there are revealed spectacular things in my life, revealed wonderful, wonderful things in my life, but there is no direct, your daughter's dead, but at least. And let me tell you, if you are ever going to a Shiva house, or you do ever encounter somebody who has suffered any kind of awful loss, never ever start a sentence with at least. Because there's no at least. There's no at least. Now, we heard a lot of at least. At least you have another child. At least you're still young and you can have more, which is really insulting to the 4 kids I had after. Like, they're like the replacement children or something. So at least I got more kids. There's no at least. And there are lots of very, very silly things that people can say when a loss happens. But in general, I definitely advise against at least. It's okay for things to just not look awesome. And it's okay to not agree that something Hashem has given you feels or seems good to you, but to understand that it is because it came from him. And for me, that is something that's carried me along now for 12 years. And it blows my mind that it's been 12 years. Like, I can't conceptualize, I know that it's been 12 years. I know that time has passed, but it's not something I could even understand. This year, about a month ago, would have been Adal Shina's bas mitzvah. And around her birthday has always been a really difficult time for me because it's this celebration that should be but isn't. And there have been a few years where I've like walked around in circles. I remember like literally like pacing. Like, what do I like? Maybe we'll like get cupcakes and we'll eat them and we'll say that they're like for her and that'll be a satisfactory birthday thing. But there's no thing that you do on that day. You know, in Yiddishkeit and Judaism, we have things that we do on the anniversary of somebody's passing. We have things that we do on the birthday of somebody who is here. But what do you do on the birthday of somebody who isn't here? If it's a rebbe, if it's a gadol, if it's, you know, a big person, then maybe you make a celebration. But when it's your own kid, it's so awkward. It's so awkward. So, you know, there's all these years where I've been like, we'll do a thing, or maybe we'll, I don't know. And then this year, as her bas mitzvah was coming up, this was like definitely one of those times where I was just like, can you see me? It's like, we have to do a thing. And, you know, in particular, because last year was Menachem Mendel's bar mitzvah. So like, we're just like fresh off of the bar bas mitzvah train. So like, I totally should have been doing something, right? And I had no idea what to do. And there were times when things are really not revealed. There are times when it is really, really hard to figure out what Hashem wants from you. And it's really difficult on your neshama and on your just mental wellness. And then there are times when Hashem tells you, I got this. I have you covered. And I really, really appreciated this because I had no idea what to do. And Hashem said, listen, I have an idea. And I got an email, like literally as I was trying to start this conversation with my husband about what are we going to do, an email popped up, sponsor a book. And it's coming out like right around when her bar mitzvah would be. And that is what we did. You can see them right there. That's Sefer HaMitzvahs. Thank God. Let me see if I can find the page. We were able to, Baruch Hashem, purchase a quarter-page dedication. And I, once again, like hemmed and hawed over, well, if we're going to dedicate it, what should we say? Because here's another weird situation. It's a birthday for a person who isn't alive. So is it a happy birthday? Is this what is this? Is it a celebration? What are we going to say? Happy birthday to my dead kid. Happy birthday to my, what? It's a bas mitzvah, but it's not really a bas mitzvah. What are we doing here? And I think that I figured it out. And really, this is one of those times where, like, sometimes Hashem is really hidden. And sometimes he does like really huge things, like splits an entire body of water, so that you can walk through. And then sometimes Hashem is just like, here, I'm going to hold your hands and walk you through it. And he did, Baruch Hashem. He really walked us through it. And let's see if you can see this in the back. We've dedicated, it says, Alilei Nishmas, to the elevation of the soul of Adel Shena. It's my daughter, Bas Mordechai Elia, the daughter of Mordechai Elia, my husband. Let's celebrate our shiny bas mitzvah with Mashiach Tzidkenu. Now, this is a play on words. If you know me, you know that I really like this. Now, we called Adel Shena shiny because Shena, shiny, obviously. And so that's an adjective. And when a person becomes the age of bar or bas mitzvah, they are a bar or bas mitzvah. So she is a shiny bas mitzvah. And, regardless of what world she's in, whether she is in this one or the next, she is that. And if Mashiach Tzidkenu, if Mashiach comes now, then we can truly celebrate it and celebrate her together. And I feel that with this book, which, by the way, everybody should get because it is a really easy to learn from book and something that you can use to live Judaism every day. I feel like participating in that allows us and allows her to participate in mitzvahs every day. And when you lose a child, you lose the potential of their growth as a human. And the connections that you can make later in their name allow them to continue to influence good and bring good into this world. And I'm really, really blessed that we were able to do that with her and for her with this book. But moving on to my kids who are in this world, I would like to talk a little bit about homeschooling, if I'm not like chewing your ear off a little bit more. Or let me talk a little bit more about like my living kids and our life now. So now that we've moved forward, so Adel Shena was born in New York, And then Izzy, Yisrael Simcha, was also born in New York. And then Meir Shlomo, also born in New York. And then finally, we found our way back to Florida 6 years ago, 10 years after we originally moved to New York, and 4 kids richer. So we finally got back to Florida, and then our youngest 2 children, Betzalel Pesach, Spock, and Nerys were born here. Now, Nerys, my 3.5-year-old daughter, was born almost exactly 8 years after her sister's yahrzeit. To say that she was long awaited is an understatement. To say that she was is an understatement. She is not a replacement for Adele Shana. She is not in anything for anybody. If you know her, she is exactly what she decides she is when she decides she is. But to have that energy in our home again was and is a spectacular, healing, amazing thing. And I hope that she and her brothers never, ever understand what that means. And I think a lot that I hope that my kids never understand how much I love them. Because the love that you have for living children after one passes away it's not more, but it's very different from the love that you have for your children when they're all living. And I hope that very few of you understand that. But so these kids that I have, there are quite a lot of them. And they're these spectacular human beings. Really amazing, hilarious, frustrating, spectacular human beings. And not only do I have an appreciation for them because of our family dynamic that we lost a child, but we talk about who is in our family. We talk about the names of their siblings, and they know that Adele Shana will be here when Mashiach comes. And for us, the idea of bringing Mashiach, of working towards bringing Mashiach, it's conceptual and it's an idea. It's something that we work towards. It's something that we want. But for my children, it is a realistic eventuality. It is as if it is on the calendar that we've got December, January, February, Mashiach. It just is a truth for them. And they have this simple acceptance of it that I wish I could put in a bottle and just give it out everywhere. Because for them, it just is. Mashiach is coming and Adele Shana will be here. And they ask like the most mundane questions about it. Like, oh, well, when Adele Shana gets here, is she going to be 12 or is she still going to be a baby? When Adele Shana gets here, are we going to need another bed in our room? Because right now there's only 5. Or is she going to sleep in a different room? Are we going to need a new car when Adele Shana gets here? No, she would fit. Oh, but then if anybody wanted to come with us, they would have to take their own car. So we have had a conversation talking about how if we want to go to dinner with a friend, that friend is going to have to drive themselves after Mashiach comes because our car will be full. And it's amazing. I've learned how to live Jewish every day. And for my children, it just comes so naturally that it's like the air that they breathe. And I'm very lucky to be able to learn from them and to hopefully be able to internalize that a little bit myself. And I'm also very lucky that I get to learn with them. I homeschool my kids. I'm with them all day, every single day, which I know everybody is right now because of Corona, so I'm not that special anymore. But I would just like to say for the record that I was homeschooling before it was cool. And but I love it. I really do. As exhausting, as frustrating as it is, it's this amazing adventure, and I learn how to learn every day. They teach me how to teach them, and it's something that I'm really, really, really lucky to be able to do. And it obviously comes very naturally for me because I'm an only child and an introvert, and I love quiet. So having a ton of kids and being around them all the time just makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Totally does. But it's amazing. You learn a lot, not just about learning, but about people, because when you have a family that's together all the time, of course you have a family dynamic, but each person has a different personality, and you have to learn about what those personalities are in order to get along. So you learn not just how to teach them academically, but how to get through their shells. And when you're teaching individually, you have this extra challenge, because in a classroom that you have 20 kids, the material is going to get presented and moved on to the next thing, regardless of what that one kid feels. But if you're trying to deliver that to just one kid, if it's not getting through his personality shell, then you're not going to be delivering your material. So being in homeschool, in this homeschool thing, has taught me not just to get to know each one of my kids, but to value them so much, and to really value the hard shells that are their personalities sometimes, because their personalities, their individuality is what determines whether or not they're going to internalize and absorb what I'm trying to teach them, how they're going to move on with the next thing. And it's not something that I would really grasp if I weren't with them every day and I weren't trying to teach them every single day. And this is another amazing lesson in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism. Hashem made every single one of us and continues to make us in every moment. This is something that Chassidus teaches us, that it wasn't just that Hashem made the world in 6 days and then he just chilled out to go on God vacation or whatever. He is here in every moment, and if he takes a break, the world ceases to exist, right? And he puts as much effort into each individual, one to the next. Every person has the same amount of effort from Hashem. And when you're with a group of people who all function differently on a day-to-day basis, and you have to adapt to that, and you have to work with that, it really shows you how Hashem works in this world, that he made all of these people differently, and he gave us all of these people. And it's hi, this is my cat. Hi, Sylvester. He okay, go find Tati. Sorry. So the opportunity to be with my kids every day has opened up just another dimension of how Hashem works in the world to me. And, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of experiences that really, there are a lot of, narrative books, novels, maybe, that are written about experiences that, this thing showed me God's existence in the world. This major trek across, Africa or India or whatever showed me spirituality in the world. But, not everybody has that luxury, first of all, to go and have some kind of massive experience or have something massive happen to them. But that doesn't mean that Hashem is never going to reveal himself in a massive way. But we have to look for it. So, really? So there's this joke that I really like to tell. And that joke is my life being told by my cat right now. No, just kidding. Maybe I'm not, just kidding. 1 second. Let me get rid of him. Honey, can you take this cat? He's literally putting his face on the camera of my phone. Yeah, go get the cat, please. Keep him away from me. Anyway, before we were so felinely interrupted, what I was saying is, some people get to travel across the world to find God, but you don't have to. And for me, as I've said, it's been in all these little ways. But for every person, if you look, God's there. You have to make yourself a vessel. In Chassidus we say you have to make yourself a keli. You have to make yourself a vessel, and Hashem will fill you. And there's this joke that I like to tell. That's where I was getting before the cat. So this guy, Maishi, every week he's on this Hashem, please God, let me win the lottery. Please. Week goes by. Nothing. Not even 2 numbers. Please God, let me win the lottery. Please. Nothing. Finally, God, please Hashem, let me win the lottery. And this booming voice comes from heaven and says, Maishi, buy a ticket. So our ticket to this lottery of finding Hashem in our lives is just to look. You have to look. And for me, I see it in this diverse creation of my kids, in the way that they relate to Yiddishkeit, in the way that they relate to learning, in the way that they relate to life. I see that Hashem made them all very differently because they've all been nurtured the same. But it's what's inside of them, their neshames, that really make them truly different and unique and amazing. And for every person, where you find Hashem is going to be different. But you have to look. You have to look. And you don't have to go far. But he is there, and he's waiting for you. And nothing that you do can make him be farther from you. He is always there. But it is up to you to look and to find him. So I want to open up to Q&A if anybody has any questions. What made me decide to homeschool my kids? Good question. So when we lived in New York, in Brooklyn, my 2 oldest went to Lamplighters Yeshiva, which is a Montessori yeshiva in Crown Heights. And so Izzy was only there for a year, but Menachem Mendel was there for 3 years. And in those 3 years, kindergarten, first and second grade, he formed his learning style. And the Montessori way of learning is self-paced, and he was doing just spectacularly well at it. He was absorbing information. He was happy. It was really just the right place for him. And when we moved down here, we could not find a comparable alternative. Now, originally we were living farther away from the main core Jewish community, so any kind of commuting to any school really was out of the question. But even after, we realized it really wasn't going to be a good fit for him to enter a central learning environment, meaning an environment where the students sit at the desk and the teacher teaches, and the education is paced to the group as opposed to the individual. So I learned how to homeschool for him, and we thought that Izzy would be good with being mainstreamed. We thought he'd do all right. And we had thought maybe we would mainstream him when he started kindergarten. But emotionally, for him, the idea of being separated while I was home with his brothers at the time, the other kids in the house were Menachem Mendel, Maishi, and Spock was a baby. He felt like he was being like kicked out, and I wouldn't do that to him. And again, this was a way that Hashem really worked in our favor, really, really worked to make things smooth for us, to smooth the way for us, because it wasn't until later that we learned that Izzy had ADD, very acute ADD, and he was also very advanced intellectually. So he was this balance that really wouldn't have fit well in a classroom setting. And as we progressed with, getting him evaluated and getting his issues taken care of, we basically were told like putting him in any kind of mainstream school would really be detrimental to him. So I think that this is really a place where Hashem set me up to succeed and kind of like got me ready to be able to support Izzy when the time came, because once Izzy was ready to start homeschool, then I was really ready to homeschool him. And like, thank God, Menachem Mendel is my oldest kid. They say that the oldest kid is your practice child, and he is really pliable and resilient, and he is the kind of kid that rolls with a lot of things. So we were able to try out a lot of different things on him before Izzy got to the part where he really needed to be homeschooled. Does that answer your question? I hope. Are there any other questions? Do I have the Q&A thing available to me, or do I have? I'm not a very experienced Zoomer, as it were. I think I can only swipe that away. It's like left and right. I don't think there are any more like options. Oh, wait, no, I found more options. Oh, cool. So if there's anything else. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so is there anything else anybody wants to know from me? What is Spock's style? Spock's learning style? Throw it at him as he runs past. Spock's style, I'm getting to know his style. For him, everything has to be like this exciting adventure. I think he was like slowly showing it to me. This is a very neat thing. A really fun thing about homeschooling is that you really, really get to know your kids' personalities. You really get to like watch them turn into real people, you know? And he, I mean, Tanya, of all people, know that he like Spock wants to conquer things. You know, he wants to show the world that he's boss. But he's also starting to get into this age where like he really likes the idea of a routine. So I'm trying to work with that. Spock has no fear. He's actually started to have a little bit of fear, and he does not want to be, he's in a phase where he doesn't want to be separated from me at any point in his life unless he's with my mother-in-law. But he's he has a lot of that middle childness to him, even though he's, you know, in the younger third of my kids. He has a lot of middle child where he's like struggling for the spotlight. So he has got to like stand up and show you how awesome he is. So for him, he likes a lot of that, like, hey, look what I can do thing if I can. But then, you know, when you're trying to teach them anything in like a particular thing, then you have to say like, hey, you want to conquer the ABCs now? It's like a battle of wits. You know, and also just play, because he's 5. So I think that early childhood education is like, it's like the most fun, because you really have to get into their heads if you want to impart any particular lesson. So that means that you have to play too. And that's really, really fun. As adults, you know, we forget how to play because we don't have to. But then if you're teaching a kid who relates to play, that's how they communicate with the world, then you have to teach yourself to play again, and you have to teach yourself to see the world that they see it. So like last week we went on a hike at Fern Forest at a nature preserve through the Everglades, and I noticed like a little ways in that there was like another family, you know, social distancing, like kind of, but they were like watching us, kind of like following us as we walked. And I smiled, you know, I'm not weird or anything. So, and she looked back and she's like, I just want to watch you guys. And I realized at that point, I kind of like got self-conscious because I realized like, wait, why is she watching me? And I realized like, as we walk, I'm like pointing out every different kind of like moss and lichen. Well, first I was pointing out moss, and then Menachem Mendel corrected me that, oh, those ones that look like round tiles are lichen. And the different kinds of trees and everything. And as I'm doing that, then Spock is also doing that. So, you know, I'm like really getting to know all their learning styles. So there's like the play and getting into it. How do you really learn to know that? Okay, so Dvarlea wants to know, how do you learn to know that what God does is good? I don't know if I can give you a practical instruction. I think it has to do with your own personality. Yes. Okay, let's start there. All right. You start from within when it comes to knowing Hashem. Okay. In order to know that everything that God does is good, you have to know, really know, that Hashem is smarter than you, and Hashem is bigger than you. And I'm not saying this as like, you know, I'm not trying to put you down or chas v'shalom. I'm saying that you have to know and you have to accept that you are not the greatest actor in your life. You are not the most powerful influence in your universe, or in the universe at all, but like in your personal universe. It's very natural for a human being to think of the world as themselves and then what's outside of it, right? It's me and then how I relate to the world. And that it inflates your sense of self. And for me to truly know that Hashem is only good and everything comes from him and therefore everything is good, that's the essence of bittul for me. So in Chassidus, we talk about bittul, which is nullification of humility, of pushing your sense of self down and making it small, and making what Hashem wants bigger. So bittul starts by acknowledging Hashem's desires over your desires. So for a person who didn't grow up from, this might actually be something that's easier, because for me, I had to make the choice to eat kosher food because Hashem told me to keep Shabbos. I mean, we already talked about how I was like, addicted to Shabbos, but like to keep Shabbos because Hashem told me to. Because when it comes down to it, these things are chuk, and as much as they might have reasons that seem to fit in our world, we do them because Hashem told us to. So for me, I had to make the decision over and over again to do something because Hashem wanted it for me. And Hashem's desire overrode mine. So my desire to eat non-kosher food, and my habit even of it, because I grew up eating non-kosher food, was nothing compared to Hashem's desire for me to eat kosher food. My desire to wear whatever I want is nothing compared to Hashem wanting me to acknowledge my bodily autonomy and draw borders. That's how I think of sneezes. Those are my borders. And that's a process. And as much as I envy my kids for growing up with this this idea that Mashiach is a reality and a truth, I realize that, they've never had to make the choice to not keep kosher, to keep kosher or not, or to do or to not. They just, it's a reality for them. And remember I talked about before, like for me, very often the absence is what brought the idea to the forefront. So for me, knowing that Hashem is good is knowing that Hashem is greater than I am, that Hashem knows more than I do, and my perception could be false. Okay, I have another thing. I know personally at Mikva, 1 second, sorry, find that. Here we go. I know personally that Mikva was a stressful one for me. I was a newlywed on the Upper West Side, struggling for time. I mean, what made me become a Mikva lady? I thank you. I'm really, really glad to hear that I had that impact. What made me take that job? It made it fun, really? Oh, really? Ellie, that's so sweet. Thank you. Okay. Why did I take that job? Well, So earlier when I talked about being at FSU, I talked about that culture of availability, right? Um, I felt that the halachas, the laws of taras mishpacha, of family purity, reconciled for me the culture of availability that I grew up with. And later through a lot of reconciliation, I learned that this was like really not just part of my experience as an adolescent, but also as a kid. I found that taras mishpacha took an aspect of a relationship that is ubiquitous. Every relationship has a physical connection, right? I mean, even animals. But only taras mishpacha takes this very natural, ubiquitous thing and makes it holy, and makes every aspect of it holy. Everything about it is holy. And and without shame and without ascetism, it gives holiness to this relationship that, for me personally, I felt had been co-opted from me. Before I became religious, I felt that my physical existence was something that I either owed to other people or was making an effort to sequester within myself. And Taras Mishpacha says, no, this is a holy thing within every relationship, within every married relationship. So, as when I got married, I'm a writer by trade. So I started writing about mikvah. I started writing about taras mishpacha, and that was really, I felt so proud to be able to do that. And it just happened that as I had pieces being published online, that the opening came, and I called. And I remember when I made that connection on the phone, I hadn't really even like planned on what I was gonna say. Just like, can I send you, like, I'd like to apply. And I just started gushing about how much I loved the concept of mikvah, and how enriching and how beautiful I thought it was. And I would be really, really proud and really glad if I could participate with them. And I was really very thankful when it all worked out. And it was very sad when it was time for that chapter of our lives to end. But like I said, like, Hashem is in charge of everything, and it worked out beautifully. Again, happy endings and everything. But like, I personally felt that it was something that was difficult for me to put into perspective, ultimately. But I took the job because I really truly feel that that's something that Hashem planted in my heart, to really be connected with the mitzvah of taras mishpacha, and the mitzvah is connected with Jewish marriage. And to this day, I still take a great deal of joy and a spectacular amount of pride in having those halachos as something that I feel connected with. And I still teach individually, even though I'm not working in that institution anymore. Thank God. I'm very, very glad to be able to teach kalas and to teach taras mishpacha, and to provide counsel in the within the Jewish marriage relationship. And it's just, I took it because the opportunity was presented to me, and because it's something that is a very deep and very proud connection for me. I hope I answered your question. And I'm really, really so thankful that I was able to make that impact for you. Any other questions? I saw one. How did my parents, my in-laws react to mine and my husband coming home? Oh, that's complicated. How did they? I think that it was difficult at first to first of all, to navigate the pragmatics of it, of like what it means to have a meal together, or spend a weekend together. And in the end, I mean, now it's seamless, really. Like my, like we really have it down to a science. I think that really, our family is very proud of us. And I mean, that's what loving family is that regardless of where life takes you, they love you and are glad to be with you, and are happy when you're truly fulfilled. And our real families see that we're happy, and like see the fulfillment. And while there was some difficulty navigating the pragmatics, I think that once we figured out how to work it all together, respectfully of one another, and that's a really, really important thing when you're making any change of lifestyle, to consider not only where it's taking you, but also, how can you considerately navigate that with your family. But as long as we navigated it in a respectful way with them, then at the end of the day, Hashem is goodness and Hashem is love, and Hashem's love just shone through in that journey also, and guided us to a way to make everything work. And real family that loves you will connect with that, and Hashem shows his love to us and the people that love us. And we've definitely seen that in working out how our family works together. Anything else? Any other questions? You don't have to feel pressured to ask me questions. Connie, what about you? Is there anything else that you wanted me to ramble on about? Thank you, Dvoralea. Thank you for coming. Oh my gosh, it's 9:40.
I just wanted to say thank you. As usual, it's always fascinating to listen to you. And it's just, I can't believe it's an hour and 40 minutes passed by, and it seems like 5 minutes that I've been listening.
Well, I feel that way whenever I talk about myself. So.
What? I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said I feel that way whenever I talk about myself.
Yeah, but when other people feel that way, then it means, then it means something. And as a homeschooling mother myself, I really enjoy watching your, following you on Facebook, and and when I come visit you down south, the endless amount of patience that you have for your kids, really amazing. We share the fact that we both have a lot of boys.
So many boys. So many boys. How are the bathrooms in your house ever clean?
I was gonna say the bathrooms, that's the part that nobody sees on Facebook. And so I really know to appreciate it. Your, I remember last time I saw you was, I think it was in your house. Oh no, was in Hollywood, right? Florida.
Yeah. That's when we met Jordan. Hi, Jordan. Jordan is in the chat right. Yeah, he is.
Hi, Jordan.
Yeah.
And
that's when I adopted that stray. Hi, sweetie. Long time no see.
And I don't know if FSU was the same when you were here as it is now. I'm just more aware of things now.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for bringing up your experience with how you like, I think it's nice for me as someone who is here, and for other people to hear about your experience at FSU, and how you felt about everything. It's very meaningful. I remember I was wondering if you ever taught your kids how to hunt elephants with tweezers. Do they know how to do that?
Oh my gosh. I have told them those jokes. Sometimes like I'll tell those jokes like if I really need to like bug my kids. But it's fun when they get to that like age of sarcasm. And I feel like now that Menachem Mendel's 14, so he is like, like perfect. He's just so ripe for the picking with terrible sarcastic jokes and like horrible puns. So it's kind of my mission in life right now to like make him go like this. Oh. I live for it. I really do. It's great. And unfortunately now that we're in COVID times, he doesn't socialize as much. I can't do it as often, but like when he's in public around his friends, that's like the best time to do it. Like I love dropping him off at Boy Scout camp out, and he's getting all his stuff together, and like being a Boy Scout means that you're like really independent and like setting up your own tent, you're cooking for 15 people, you're like really working hard. So I love to drop him off at Boy Scout campouts, and just as he's starting to set up his tent and really like establish his space in the campground, and I'm about to get in my car and drive away, I love to shout, "Bye, sweetie, I'm gonna miss you so much when you're gone. I love you." And then I won't get in the car and drive away until he yells, "I love you," across the campground. That's like the rule, is like he knows I'm not leaving until he does that. And the even more like amazing thing is he's, as much as like he like rolls his eyes at me, he's totally cool with this. And I feel like, I don't know, like maybe I can claim maybe I can claim some credit for this, and maybe I can't, but maybe I can go ahead and like make this like my success as a mother, is that I have a 14-year-old son who is confident enough to let his mother like make him scream "I love you" across a campground in front of like 12 of his dude friends, and then just like go right back to what he was doing and not be like, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed." He's just like, "Hey guys, what's up?"
That's funny. But
He's the person I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I remember watching you with my kids before you had your own kids. I don't know if you remember, but you were reading books to my kids, and
oh, I do.
remember that Passover that you were all, like so many people at my house slept? We had like a few Bahrain and you, Alana was there, whatever,
Yeah.
7 days that everyone, and you just spent so much time with my kids, and I always knew that you would be such a good mother.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember I was sleeping in the playroom, I think, that year, that Pesach.
I think it was a whole thing that eventually I was like, you know what, I'm going to sleep, just sleep wherever you want, because Alana wanted to sleep somewhere, in one place, and and I don't think you
That's
cared.
how
But
I just remember sleeping. I remember
I
sleeping in
think,
the
yeah, I
playroom.
think you slept in the playroom. Yeah, right, you're right.
Was
Yeah,
that was that the time that I was wrestling? No, I don't want to bring it up because he's old now and it's gonna embarrass him. But I definitely remember a really hilarious conversation with Ari. I don't know if you remember that one.
I don't.
I'll remind you of it later. I also remember like once like talking to him and like we're like talking about like farm animals. We were talking Hebrew and I said something about like a chicken. So I said something about oaf, a chicken, and he points at his nose. He's like, "No, this is an off. That's my nose." Hilarious. You really have to like pay attention and listen because children will say the most hilarious things you've ever heard.
Right, right. So I just wanted to say that I'm very, very inspired. And thank you
Yeah.
so much for talking tonight.
Thank you for having me virtually.
You see, I always wanted to bring you to Tallahassee, and
Mm.
now finally with a Zoom.
Yeah, now I get to come to Tallahassee without the drive.
Yeah.
Oh, I think my earbud just went off.
All right. Okay. But
Stomach.
so thank you very much. I'm gonna leave. So good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Hani, for having me.